If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month, with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex. I'm joined with my friend here, Alan Guyan from Made Plus Shoes. We'd like to thank Yachting International Radio, 365 Yachts, and the Wave 60 for hosting us here today. So with that out of the way, Mr. Allen, would you like to give us a breakdown of what you guys are about and your experience?
Yes. Well, thank you for having us on. We are a domestic footwear company located in Annapolis, Maryland, where we make our own shoes. We do this through a sustainable cues of less waste. Our shoe textile upper is made from 6.5 water bottles. We pair that with a great outsole, which is a Michelin tread. And then we have a removable insole or midsole. That way the shoes can be washed. So our whole process is telling you our brand is about reducing waste through the footwear journey.
Mm-hmm. And so could you give us a background on your career in manufacturing? I know you said you worked for Under Armour and kind of led you to creating your own company here.
Yeah, I've had probably 25 years of making products for all sorts of companies, from automotive to aerospace, DOD, and then, of course, Under Armour was a big tenure of mine. I was just always passionate at a very young age. My father had a machine shop, so I got a chance to be privy to how to make things at an early age. And then as I grew and went to school for engineering and machine design, and then later into industrial design, this kind of did a capstone of like, I want to make products for a living.
Yeah.
And everywhere I went, it kind of did something kind of cool. I think all of it's cool, but I think as you got more into the product development realm, the shoe category ended up being the one I thought was the coolest.
And what kind of drove you into that shoe? You said you worked with aerospace, medical, other consumer, DOD. Can you break that down a little bit, or is it kind of top secret?
No, I mean, the DOD stuff, well, the automotive stuff was a lot about automation, about changing the way you make the process of, again, in early 20s. And as I kind of developed my career into the DOD world, it was all about spy gadgets and doing some really cool, QS kind of things for tracking applications. I can't go in detail too much, but other than that, it was really cool stuff. But then when I kind of got privy to Under Armour, was another vehicle for me too, because I came in as a director of innovation. I did some really cool stuff, working with some cool athletes, a plethora of projects, built innovation labs and innovational factories, and had a really good tenure there and did a lot of really cool stuff. And the appreciation I left from there was footwear was a cool product. You had a hard rubber and hard plastic with soft textiles and laces, and had to fit and had to look cool, and who's wearing it and who's not wearing it. So all those things, and then the engineering behind it, there's a lot of engineering in the foam science and the way it's designed science to, prevent, wrinkles, non-wrinkles, and along with, it's got to look cool on the shelf, and it had this out-of-body experience where somebody's who's wearing it again, So all that kind of built into this, that's a pretty cool product to work on, because there's multiple steps of afterlife. I mean, I've made shoes for famous athletes and celebrities before this company. I've made some shoes for some famous athletes and celebrities for this company. But just walking through that journey was just really enlightening. It wasn't just about the celebrities, but it was about the creation of the product. Now somebody has the experience with it, and now they go and they tell their friends or see who's wearing it. It's just a cool path of watching that whole go through.
Yeah, can you kind of go into what kind of celebrities you guys work with? Because, you're showing me some pictures like Tom Brady with your shoes. How does that feel, as being now your business owner designing these products and to see these guys wearing it?
Well, I'm not doing Tom Brady shoes right now.
No.
That was my previous life with the previous brand. But I did work with Michael Phelps and Tom Brady and a dozen other really top named guys. This one, we're a little bit lower key. We're focused on a lot of sailors, professional sailors. We're also focusing on, some local aftermarkets. We've done some baseball players. We've done some, hip hop, I would say moguls and certain situations where they are big yachters and then they want shoes to go with their yachting and they're kind of make it their personalized product for them. But we haven't, and we've done a lot of pickleball stuff, which is kind of different than the sailing we're talking about today. So through all those journeys, we're still focused on the athlete. I think I'm more focused on the upcoming athletes. Of course, we're a small company. We can't afford a future Tom Brady, or a future, Michael Phelps. But what we can get to is we can get a collective group of really good professional coaches and professional sailing coaches or crews and make that more experience, because part of my positioning is making the shoes more accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be exclusive. I want demand and want sales.
Yeah, of course.
But naturally, we want to make sure that we can make the shoes for everybody and can have that same experience.
Okay. And what kind of drove your focus into the yachting industry, or the sailing industry? Because obviously we're here at the Palm Beach International Boat.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of white space in the yachting / crew deck shoes, because the shoes are really applicable for on and off boat. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a nice, everyday casual shoe, but also could be a really good crew shoe. What drove me to that was, we're based in Annapolis, Maryland, which is like one of the sailing hubs of the Americas. And I just thought it would be nice to have something that's community supported, community local. I can have access to content and boats and actually make a difference. And I like being on the water too. So it naturally is a nice fit. Plus there was some white space in the space of, dedicated shoes for the boat versus flip-flops and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and watching other former brands that have let consumers down. So we like to say that we're taking consumer share from brands who have disappointed, without getting the right result they are, so.
And so also when it comes to shoes, especially in the yachting industry, there's no real shoes I've seen or stuff we've talked about with interior crew that they've been stuff that's specifically made for them. You have On Cloud, which is very popular. I use those for my running shoe. And you go get a little bit more into detail on just like the structure of your shoes. Because, us as yacht crew, we're on our feet all the time, all day, every single day.
Yeah. Let me break it down real quick. The whole shoe is about, making shoes with less steps and less waste. Traditional shoes go through over 300 some steps to make a final product. We do 50 steps or less, which is dramatic. It's dramatic on how you select materials, it's dramatic how you have the construction. But one of the things that we kind of pride ourselves on is the upper itself is made from 6.5 upcycled water bottles. So we get the yarn made and we retwist it in house, and then we knit the whole upper into shape. And naturally you get about 6.5 water bottles for a pair of shoes. And then we start picking other pieces of the puzzle, which has a predominantly content of recycled content, all 100% lace on that as well. And then as we pair it with a Michelin outsole, so we try to bring that cross branding and also cross force branding, which people would consider Michelin to be a respected tire company, which would make good tread for shoes. So that's how it kind of comes together. Inside is a removable insole made out of PU, which is a polyurethane foam, which is a little bit firmer on the ride, but it's made for standing and walking. It's not a running shoe. It's not about energy return. This is about removing it, but also, spending a lot of time on your feet and making that support you need. And then the last thing is that since they're made out of recycled PET, they don't really absorb water. So they dry super fast. And I literally had a real world experience setting up with a booth here this week where I stepped in grass and completely caved my shoe in mud. Completely sunk it in the grass, which was a surprise. But I hosed it off the spigot, and then the next morning they're fine.
Next morning.
Yeah, and actually I wore them half the day, which was, definitely soaking wet, which they really weren't soaking wet. They were just kind of like damp. And yeah, so they're dry. So they really dry fast, but they're great for that performance attribute of being out in the water. We've had multiple people visit at other shows who have sailed around the world and come back up. These are like my go-to shoes to wear when I'm on the boat.
Okay. And so you say this is recyclable material you guys use. You mentioned the plastic water bottle. So this is made so you guys purchase plastic water bottles to manufacture?
Yeah, there's two sides of the coin here. So the first one is the material front of sustainability. When it comes to the yarn level, we purchase a yarn at a raw level, from your former area where you used to live, North Carolina. And then we twist it as we bring it in-house and we size it all out. And then we have advanced knitting machines, which is kind of like an essence of showing the needles here on this card. And it knits into shape. And it goes through a process from there to make the upper and the construction. The second piece of sustainability is we do a lot of batches or on-demand production, which we don't overproduce shoes, which that would be a nice problem to have, by the way. But what we do is the reduced amount of steps in that process, which naturally becomes sustainability by itself. We import most of our stuff as raw goods, which also reduces the footprint of like having all these different finished good pieces coming over. As we're growing, we are seeing that some stuff is a constant seller, that it may need to go elsewhere. But for the time being, we're still be able to maintain the production.
Okay. And why did you guys focus so much on sustainability? Is it really environmentally friendly? Was that a main focus for you?
I think in general, like footwear manufacturing in general has produced a lot of waste. Traditional plastics take about 400 years to break down, which is kind of insane if you think about it. It takes that long for something to break down.
Yeah.
So if you have a lot of overproduction, you naturally have a percentage of that is going to be overproduction and wasted. And they can only like sell it so many channels before eventually they have to just scrap it, because it's really hard to give it away because it devalues the brand. Also, they see as revenue. Also, it's hard to go through multi-layers of discounting stores to get rid of it because of the, it devalues your brand. People don't want to buy the premium anymore because they see it as they wait for the discount. So it's a really hard problem to solve. The first problem is trying to get the product closer to consumers. Was my thought. It was reduce the waste process, reduce the process, choose really sustainable materials, and bring the product closer to where it's being consumed. And that's how we've been driving for most time.
And where are you guys mostly selling these? I mean, I know you guys are getting into the yachting industry now, and I believe it's a fantastic brand, especially because a lot of yacht crew, we care a lot about sustainability, especially because there's so much waste in our industry alone. So how has your progress been, and how many years have you guys been in?
We're going into our 5th year. We've only been selling shoes for about 2.5 years. You had to build a factory and staff and samples that way. But as we move forward from here, we've been selling sailing and yachting shoes since the beginning. That was our first shoe was Skiff 1, and our second shoe was Skiff 1 there. It's kind of that one right there.
Mm-hmm.
And we started selling those. We sell on DTC is our big channel. We also do a few wholesale accounts, and we have our own retail store in downtown Annapolis. And we have a shoe truck. So part of the first journey of it was we have not a food truck, but a shoe truck that we would take around to events and make it a retail experience for the consumer and give them that performance feeling and so forth.
And so when it comes to manufacturing, just for my personal interest, I come from a racing family. And so when it comes to engineering this stuff, I'm extremely just intrigued in it. When you see the manufacturing process as it continues to evolve, are you guys trying to change the game in a sense or make it easier?
That's a great question. I mean, manufacturing footwear has historically been, not extremely innovative. It's most of the innovation of footwear has come from the chemistry of the components, good foams and good rubbers, and even the textiles and how they layer up and stuff. But the process itself has historically not changed too much. There's a few new things out there that, some of the people may comment on, but for the most part, it's kind of stayed the same. So our process was to kind of make a micro factory to do these quick turns using a few manufacturing pillars that kind of feed the product line itself. So in some ways, we built the infrastructure before the demand of the product, which is kind of good and bad. I mean, the good is that we continue to innovate and we continue to iterate and we continue to have a great feedback loop to improve the product. Downside is that, we spent a lot of money to make that possible, and then we're getting the demand, so usually it's the opposite. You try to get demand and then you build infrastructure and so forth. But part of our positioning was really trying to get, a couple products that can be made in the USA profitable and sustainable. And we've kind of done that. We need a little bit more to be profitable. But yeah, so it's the overall arching position that as we look at the manufacturing process as a whole, there is a couple of key areas that we see massive room for improvement, but now the demand needs to come along before we can bring the innovation to life. And with the recent volatile supply chain markets for the last couple of years, innovation is on the front center, but it's not nearly getting as much attention as traditional production and maintaining your business.
Yeah. Do you think that the innovation is being stalled by, current geopolitical situations?
Absolutely. I mean, I just got a phone this morning when one of the guys was telling me that even the foam now in some countries may be held back as preparation for something you may need for another product. So it's already starting to show that that's just the front of conflict. The conflict of trade wars and stuff like that, which is very common in this business at different levels for different administrations and different stuff. This is volatile right now, and it's hard to predict things. And it's not just the tax piece; it's the relationship piece with the vendors. And there's a few pieces that while you start really working through the economics of it, becomes quite challenging. And it's hard to navigate. It's even seasoned professional like yourself, like it can be quite daunting to try to figure out the best path moving forward for certain items based on variable inputs that are out of your control.
Yeah, it seems like it's just a lot of the things that are happening now. It just puts strains on local businesses and businesses like yourself.
Yeah, definitely. There's an impact for sure. I mean, there's a lot of people want American-made products made. They pick the quality up. They go, wow, this is really, I can tell it's American-made. It's really got a lot of quality. But then they don't necessarily want to give the price point for it. They don't necessarily want to shell the price. Or where's the deal at? Where's my 2-for-1 special? And shoes have been built around a model, which is what they're accustomed to. So they're not asking out-of-line questions. They're just asking things that a company necessarily can't do to make it in America. My advice to listeners who listen to this podcast and any others picks it up is that if you really truly want American-made product, put your money where your mouth is. Really spend the extra dollars, because it really costs just by labor, logistics, infrastructure, and so forth. It just naturally costs more.
Yeah.
And same with even using content. I mean, you're creating this content. If you outsource part of that to, I don't know, the post-production somewhere else, another country, you're going to get a cheaper result, but then you may have to go back to that multiple times.
You need a revamp.
It's naturally where if you pay somebody that you already familiar with and you're saying language and so forth, you may pay more of a premium for that, but then you may have 1 or 2 times at the back.
Yeah, and you're getting a much better product.
And usually getting a better product because you being able to influence them what you want versus somebody's just getting a project overseas and saying, I need to do this and this. Oh, I delivered something. It doesn't necessarily capture your essence of what you're focusing on, but it does get you somewhere, and that's, you can't work that way, all the time,
It doesn't give you the essence.
Call center maybe, yeah, but
call center and enough.
Yeah.
Menial stuff, but when it comes to what your product actually is and the standard you want for it, it's not going to meet that threshold. Versus, I think American-made products and what you guys are doing, it's extremely fantastic, because a lot of people, especially in the yachting industry now, they hear American-made or American company, and they just get this little.
Yeah, it was our tagline for quite a while. I mean, I wouldn't say a tagline. It was one of our selling pieces that we converted a lot of people on selling them on American Made. And I was like, got a little bit of a problem here. Like, we need to, this is a performance product. And we should be talking about performance, experience, and activity. And then, oh, by the way, we try to make this sustainable and we make this local.
Yeah.
Which would be like, third, fourth, and fifth item. But it usually kind of goes back and forth between customization, sustainability, and made in the USA.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, we'll get that story message to the consumer as they wear the product, as the long sailors and crews and who actually have worn it and tested and continue to build that case out. But it's the performance-based product first, is the way I look at it, and then everything else kind of trickles down from a great product to a great story to, and so forth.
Can you go a bit more into detail as we now focus more on the crew that would actually be using this product? As kind of the durability and like long-term usage of these shoes. Because I imagine once people start listening to this and then see your product and order and use it, they'll probably be using it for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sock-like fit feel. So the nice thing about the in-shoe experience is it's going to kind of adapt to your foot. The PU is going to settle down, kind of do some slight molding. The wearability, I mean, I have shoes since the beginning still that are not worn out. And again, I call myself a biased character because I brought a dozen shoes just this week to be here. And I'm constantly switching them out, so I don't necessarily get a long-term wear that other customers may get on my shoes. But the shoes that we have had long-term web tests on, durability is great. It is a knit product, so it's not made out of leather. It's not made out of Dyneema, where it's like, you can't shear it. You can shear it, but, it's a certain application shoe. It's really focus on the performance cruise, deck cruise, casual, business casual, all these layers to it. And when you stay in that silo, you're going to wear it. It's your go-to shoe. It's going to be your everyday shoe.
Yeah.
And that's the nice thing about what I liked about the whole process is that shoe itself was really designed to be kind of an everyday, semi-business casual shoe with performance cues. Those performance cues goes back to sailing and traction opportunities and so forth. So that's kind of, I think, in a general nutshell, how the product's being constructed.
I also think, when it comes to yachting, we only have very few options when it comes to footwear. But even when people are, during service, they're wearing more professional shoes that aren't necessarily as comfortable, versus you guys have these extremely professional looking products that over the long term actually feels good on your feet. Because me personally, I don't like wearing shoes on deck. But then trying these shoes, I'm like, okay, I could actually fit around with this, get this wet all day, and then it's not going to be smelled out my cabin later in the evening.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that way. And the other thing too, like as we started building out the performance stuff for the cruise and decks for sailing and yachting, we also started building out, a lot of pickleball program, which we got a lot of good traction on that. And we started making entry level pickleball, and I brought a couple extra pickleball shoes that we're going to be dropping later this year. But the nice thing about those is I built a trainer and a runner at the same time, because some crews this will work really good for, but other crews are going to want more of a, I don't want to use a running shoe silhouette, but it's probably more of a running shoe silhouette that is blocked out in basic colors, black and whites and stuff like that. So we will be introducing a running shoe and a training shoe, which will both be applicable for yachting as well. So we never lose that DNA as we build additional products. We may market them in another way for different colors in different category, but when it comes to our current core sailing and yachting, we're going to have a couple additional options outside of just the traditional cup sole construction.
I also think when it comes to the Michelin traction, a lot of the shoes you wear on deck, it's mostly just like gym shoes, trainers, and whatnot. But you're not going to have that traction. So you're worried if you have a wet deck or you're stepping on paint, you're just going to be slipping and sliding, and that can lead to real bad injuries.
Yeah, for sure.
And so when it comes to, I know you're talking a bit more about customization. So would a boat be able to fully customize, order custom products directly through you?
Absolutely. We do this quite a bit, actually. It's a big part of our business unit is being able to cater to crews. I mean, we'll outfit a crew with maybe 3 colors, and then all those 3 colors will have a different branding on them that kind of highlights either the boat name or the company name. In some cases, we've done with even like for trade shows folks, even team names. Like we've done a lot of like charter memberships and different things where people will continue yacht clubs will want something that kind of like maybe it's a number, maybe it's a flag, and all that stuff like goes right into the customization engine. And we love doing that stuff because a lot of times if they're building like 2 or 3 pairs per person, times 10, be like 30, 40 pair order, which is a nice little burn.
Okay, sweet. And so as we start coming closer to the end, where do you guys see yourself in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
Well, hopefully still making shoes and selling shoes to everybody. I mean, we are a startup. We've been around for, like I said, almost 5 years, but it's hard. I mean, it's been a very difficult year. Not just getting sales, but really from the supply chain is challenging. And again, I think for what I look at is that, we want to continue to innovate on great products. And I hope through this season of this year, of this new stuff we want to launch out, really is a good capstone of like showing a nice, good breadth. I mean, in the beginning, we've had 1 or 2 shoes the last few years. Now we're going to add a few more shoes.
Yeah.
now it looks like a little bit bigger collection. That's just part of being a startup, and manufacturing it too, which is, if any manufacturers are listening, like, the challenges you face.
Mm-hmm.
We're like kind of a full vertical company between making it and selling it versus just making it for somebody else or just selling it just for somebody else, So it is kind of a nice thing.
So would you be able to say that your shoes are well-versed and usable throughout the entire maritime industry?
Maritime industry, but also like, if you want to go to the office and, or if you want to, go on a date, you want to go get some groceries, like it becomes like the commuter shoe. We do call it a skiff because it's a, small boat, skiff 1 and 2, but essentially it's made for everything, but we really have fully engineered it for the yachting marine time. This is kind of our business position.
Yeah, well, sweet. Well, yeah, thank you for your time. Is there any way people can get in touch with you? Go ahead, give yourselves all a shout out.
Yeah, they can get in touch with us at madeplus.com or madeplus.us on Instagram. Of course, if you got information you want to send us, you can always do info@madeplus.com as well. But yeah, we are happy to connect with anybody. We're here all week. And also, we are here to service this business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we're starting to work with you guys more personally at Yacht Crew Center, which we're very excited to be doing. And so, yeah, on that note, I'd like to thank everybody for listening. Thank you, Alan, for taking the time out of your day to come
thank
sit
you very
with
much.
us. Of course, thank you, Yacht International Radio, 365 Yachts, and the beautiful Wave 60. And, of course, our beautiful sponsor, Surfside, for taking care of us today. And with that, have a good day, everybody.